You're tuning in to the O&P Check-in, an SPS podcast. I'm Brendan Erickson, a regional sales manager at SPS.
And my name is Jacki Green, a marketing specialist at SPS. This show brings you the latest happenings in the O&P industry. We're unpacking trends and news from this tight-knit orthotics and prosthetics community.
Thank you for joining us. Let's get started. Now there's a new choice when selecting your favorite TrueLife Kinetic Light K2 foot. The original model includes a pylon at an exceptional value. However, if you prefer to order without a pylon, you will receive reduced pricing and in-stock availability with SPS. For more information on the Kinetic Light without pylon, reach out to your SPS sales account manager or SPS customer service rep today.
Did you know that SPS has a video library of over 140 videos? The SPS YouTube channel has a wide selection of product videos, supplier interviews, company updates, employee stories, and more. So follow the link in our show notes or tap the YouTube icon on the footer of our website to explore our video content library today, and be sure to like and subscribe.
Okay, I am thrilled today to welcome Lesleigh Sisson. You guys may already know her or have seen her speak at many of shows across the nation, but Lesleigh has been part of the O&P profession since 1992, and today she is the founder of O&P Insight, as well as the president of Prosthetic Center of Excellence in Las Vegas. And she was also elected to AOPA's board of directors earlier this year. She has held a variety of jobs in O&P, from office admin, certified fitter, director administration, and business owner. In today's episode, we're excited to tap into her wealth of experience and learn about ways clinicians can prevent and recover denials from payors. Welcome, Lesleigh. Great to have you here.
Thank you so much, Brendan. Thank you for having me, and I look forward to speaking with you.
Absolutely. So obviously, we're very glad to have you on the show. I kind of feel like we've booked a rock star here. So could you, just to start us off, share with us on how you got your start in O&P?
Sure. It's an unusual way. I started just over 30 years ago. I just had my 30th anniversary this last October. My dad was an executive with Sears and retired, but wasn't ready to retire. So he bought a small orthotics company in Phoenix and didn't know anything about it. The CEO stayed on, and I came to work for them at the front desk. And my husband also came to work with them and did a career change. And then he ended up going to Northwestern. And that business got bought by a larger business in Arizona, which got bought by NovaCare. My journey began over 30 years ago.
So I'm sure you have a lot of experience working with payors. In this industry, what are some common reasons you see for claims being denied?
So in our own practice, we see it. And then I have really the privilege of working with multiple practices all across the United States. So I do see a lot of denials. And when I thought about this question that I knew that you were going to ask me, I thought, there are technical denials, which means your paperwork, there's something wrong with it. It's invalid or it's missing. So for instance, a proof of delivery is missing a signature, or it's missing a date, or it's missing a delivery address. The coding is incorrect, or the quantities. So there's a technical denial. Could be your medical records from your physician are not signed properly, or there's not an addendum that was executed properly, meaning that you can see the difference between the original note and the addendum, and that the addendum's been signed and dated properly. So there's those technical denials, but those typically come after a claim review, meaning either it was a post or prepayment audit claim review, and they're looking at your documentation. There's also technical denials or rejections with the electronic claims that go over. So it may be a bilateral claim, and you didn't split out the lines for quantity one right and quantity one left. You left it on one claim line, which is how we build claims for many, many years. And you left it with quantity two and then the RT-LT modifier. And so those get either rejected or they get denied, and they're not processable. And so you can't even appeal it. So you have to basically start again. So there's claim denials with documentation, technical ones. There's claim denials with incorrect coding or even diagnosis code. So you never want to use a unspecified side for right and left, because there are three ICD-10s for most of the codes that we use. So there's three of them. There's one for right, one for left, and one for unspecified. You never want to use unspecified. You always want to use the right or left. Then the other claim denials are the content of your documentation and medical necessity. Does your medical records from your physician really substantiate the need for the care provided? And do your notes internally also establish the reason why you're providing what you're providing? We don't establish medical necessity, the doctor does, but we can support that medical necessity. And our documentation needs to very clearly state the functional level, why we came up with that functional level, or their ability to ambulate, and why they need what we're providing for them.
I actually have another question. So have you seen a shift in the type of denials over the years?
Absolutely. So I'll give you guys a little history lesson, if that's okay. I actually have a whole presentation that's called Looking Forward by Looking Back. And so for people that weren't in O&P in 2011, that's where all the RAC audits started in 2011 and 12. So there was definitely a big shift at that time. And many of us were not prepared for that. And that's when they started asking for the physician medical records. And then things sometimes move quickly in insurance billing and Medicare and things like that. But oftentimes it takes several years. So then the other payers started catching on to, hey, we should check their medical records. So now fast forward, we get a lot of prepayment and post-payment audits from either the insurance companies or from contractors that they have hired to review our claims. We get them on a weekly basis from mostly now from Performant or some other auditing entity that audits for private payers and for Medicaid MCOs, which are managed care organizations.
So you mentioned a little bit of a history lesson there, and you mentioned that you have a presentation that is a bit of a history lesson. And I wanted to back up because you're traveling around and providing this type of knowledge and experience through O&P Insight, right?
Correct.
Before we get in too deep into this, why don't you explain what that is and what you do and how our listeners could benefit from, speaking with you or going to one of your events?
Sure. So I work directly with practices all over the United States, and depending on what they need, and sometimes they don't know what they need. But when I started O&P Insight, which was in 2015, I thought this is just going to be me, and I can help them really with software implementation and some compliance, maybe understanding how to get what they need in their software. And it turned very quickly into a lot more consulting on compliance or helping with large audits or understanding how to write an appeal. And it's now turned into, today we have 13 employees at O&P Insight. We have a revenue cycle management team, which means that we bill and collect AR for some of our clients. Kurt Bertram joined me as my partner last year. Kurt is a CPO, and he is the head of AOPA's Coding and Reimbursement Committee. So he not only understands the clinical side, he understands the policy side as well. And so he can take his approach in appeals from the clinical, but also marrying that with policy. And I think that that's one thing that I find that some clinicians or some practices, they let the admin do all the policy and the clinicians don't really understand. But clinicians need to understand the policy so that when they are evaluating a patient and writing their documentation, they can meet towards policy. I speak all over the nation. I'll be at Prime Fair East in June. I often speak at the Academy meeting or AOPA I don't remember what year it was. I think it was 19, maybe 18. I think when AOPA was in Vancouver, I actually won the Sam Hammondtree Business Award for my presentation there. And so that's really what we do. We teach on a national level, but we will also go into practices and do webinars or Zoom meetings to provide education, whether it's on Medicare LCDs, compliance, writing appeals, understanding payer policy, whether it's a commercial payer or Medicaid, or even a workers' comp. I also often get calls that say, hey, what is my workers' comp fee schedule? So we have to dig into that in that state, and what you should be being paid from a workers' comp, things like that. So it's really multifaceted. And because I also own a business, I can also speak to marketing and how to reconcile your bank account to your EHR system and all of those important things to ensure that your profit and loss statements and your balance sheets are up to date, because I have to do that for my practice.
Yeah, I thank you for explaining that, because we've had a lot of people mention your name, even on our podcast. I don't know if you know her personally, but Jessica Norell.
I know Jessica very
Yeah,
well.
yeah, and she was speaking about you in very high regards, and we were talking all about soap notes and just the basics of soap notes and whatnot. And I think it fits in perfectly, because you're talking about merging the policy with the actual documentation and how to implement and make sure that you do get paid. Everybody is, as much as we're in this as a lifelong career and the rewards for it. I mean, bottom line is we are doing this as a business as well. So being able to get paid and keep your money just keeps us going.
It gives us opportunity and freedom as business owners to expand our business for growth, to hire more people, to give larger bonuses, to invest in technology, and so it's not just about, oh, because the owners want to make more money. It's about investing in our employees and in our patients, and ensuring that we can have the best practice that we can have. And if you don't have the money coming in for what you've produced, you can't do that in any business.
Right. And I would say it's even more poignant now. I mean, after seeing the global supply chain issues and the inflation we've seen, the small business makeup of our industry has got to be what, 90% of owners are small businesses. And I mean, it can't be more important right now to be able to make this money and keep it, or else, the market shocks are going to take you down. So I think everybody needs to come and listen to you.
And we did have an increase in our Medicare fee schedule by 8% this year, but not all fee schedules are based on Medicare allowables. They make up their own fee schedule. They do it from data. They look at what the codes are utilized more and things like that. So so a lot of the payers that are commercial payers are not based on Medicare allowables, and especially the Medicare Advantage plans. Those are not necessarily, we don't get paid 100% of Medicare for those Medicare Advantage plans. And I think it's now roughly 50 to 60% of Medicare beneficiaries are now on a Medicare Advantage plan.
Wow.
So we're not getting paid that 100% of Medicare, and that 8% didn't necessarily trickle down to every single contract that we have.
Right. Well, so, okay, let's get back into the nitty gritty. We took a step back, which is awesome, because I think getting the big picture is, we got to start somewhere. But the next detailed question we have is, and you don't have to give away your secret sauce on a podcast, because I know you do this as a business, but what can our listeners and O&P professionals in general do to help them prevent denials?
So I honestly don't mind giving away secret sauce, because our team can't take care of everybody. We just don't have the capacity to do that. I wish we could. I often say, I wish I could give away my services for free, because I started this to ensure that practices and practitioners and administrators could enjoy their job and do the very best that they can to take care of their patient and to take care of one another, honestly, but get paid and make sure that they stay paid. That's why I do what I do. So what they can do is, first of all, is have a really good process at how they process their patients, meaning they have a good intake process, insurance verification, authorization, that they're scrubbing that claim every step of the way, and that it is a collaborative effort between what I call the front office and the back office. Or if you're a larger practice, sometimes you have the front office, which is your intake, your insurance verifiers, and then you have mid office, which is authorization, scrubbing that claim, making sure that it's compliant. And then you have your back office, which is billing the claim and getting paid and doing any denial management or appeals. But you also have that very important piece of your clinicians, that they need to be involved at some level throughout that process. They need to be looking at their doctor's notes. They need to understand what their documentation and how it affects getting reimbursed, and just making sure that you have that whole picture of that whole episode of care. And it takes everybody. Understanding policy is very important. Understanding what's needed on a standard written order, keeping up with policy now that we have some devices, orthoses, that require a written order prior to delivery and a face-to-face visit, which we've never had that before, other than the 6 codes that required prior authorization from Medicare. And when I'm talking about policy, I'm talking about Medicare policy, and then we can get into private payer policy as well. But I really think it's just a very defined, repeatable process that you have that is almost becomes seamless behind the scenes because you get so used to doing it and everybody knows how important their role is in processing that patient experience, which turns into a claim, but it's really about the patient experience.
It's important for everybody along in those steps to know that the ultimate goal is providing the patient care too. And sometimes maybe a mid-office or a back office may feel disassociated from the patient, but they're just as important as the CPO caring for the person, because without them, it doesn't happen.
Right.
So when denials do occur, how can money be recovered?
So I'll give you an example. Okay. When we purchased our practice, soon after we got a rack audit for some AFOs, actually for bilateral KAFOs for a patient. He had carbon fiber AFOs previously, but he had a degenerative condition that now his knees were involved and he needed to have KAFOs for knee instability. It got denied as same and similar because Medicare considers everything lower extremity orthoses from an ASO ankle brace to custom KAFOs a same or similar device. So it will automatically get denied, and then we have to appeal it. So we appealed it on the fact that this gentleman had a degenerative condition. He had a change in condition. He now needed KFOs. It was denied at the first level of appeal. It was again denied at the second level of appeal. And I can write a pretty good appeal letter. We ended up taking it to the ALJ, and we won at the ALJ, but it did take that. So it takes, first of all, knowledge, perseverance. And if you don't have knowledge, go find somebody like us or other consultant or somebody that you know in the field that can help you learn policy, learn how to use policy in your appeals, understanding the denials. I see often that appeals are written and they actually didn't read the denial. They are arguing medical necessity, and it really denied because the doctor didn't sign their notes. And there are some things that if it's not signed or taken care of when you send that documentation in or when you delivered that device, there's nothing that you can do about it. But as far as like say that a doctor didn't properly sign their notes, you can get a signature attestation for those notes, and you don't want them to sign it later. You want to get that signature attestation, but they can't do a signature attestation for an order. So say that they did a signature stamp on their order. It's dead in the water. You didn't have an order before you build it, because they can't go back and do provide a new SWO or a new standard written order. You can't recover from that after.
So it kind of leads to a new question in my head about expectations. And it seems like you're incredibly confident that, hey, if I get a denial, I don't really mind. I know what's going to go on. I almost expect getting a denial. I know the pathway to appeal it. And I have the confidence that what we've done is right, and I'm going to get paid in the end. Do you see that across the board from O&P professionals, or is there a little bit of a fear factor like, wow, I got denied and I'm kind of dead in the water and I don't know what to do. I might as well give up.
That happens a lot, or they get, for lack of a better term, indignant that they should pay me, darn it. And I get it. I've been there. One of the team members on my team worked at Noridian, which is the DME MAC for jurisdictions A and D. So Michelle Wolstein was my O&P education specialist when she was at Noridian, and that's how I met her. and now she's on our team. So I would have those conversations. Dang it, this isn't fair. But you need to improve your argument, not raise your voice. And improving your argument means that you know policy and that you know that your documentation meets policy and why. Sometimes our practitioners here will come to me and they say, okay, they line it out for me because they're very involved with the documentation. And I said, hey, this may get denied, and because it's the same and similar issue, which is one of the biggest issues that we are facing right now, that it will get denied, but I am confident that we can win this on appeal, and this is why. So I actually just came back from AOPA's policy forum in Washington, D.C., meeting with legislators on the Orthotic and Prosthetic Medicare Patient-Centered Act, I think is what it's called. I hope I got it right. And basically, there's three provisions. One is that we want orthotists and prosthetists to be exempt from competitive bidding like OTs and PTs and physicians are. The other one is that we want to prohibit drop shipment of custom fitted, custom fabricated orthoses and prostheses. And then the other one is about the reasonable useful life, or RUL, for orthoses, that we want custom fabricated and custom fitted orthoses to be treated like prosthetics with no RUL. They can be replaced without regard to the reasonable useful lifetime or the RUL, so that they don't automatically get denied if they got a walking boot 2 years ago and now they've had a stroke and they need an AFO on that same side, that is not same or similar, and that RUL does not apply. So once that bill gets introduced, we need everyone's support to get to their legislators to ask them to support that bill.
And obviously this is a federal bill, correct?
Federal bill.
Okay.
Yes. Yep.
That's awesome. Thank you for doing it. And thank you for being a part of that, because this raises the bar for everybody. And we need more of this. And I would think that everyone would love to jump on board and support you. So where do we do that?
So if you go to aopanet.org, and you can find information there.
Okay. So what training resources are out there for maybe a new clinician or somebody that's starting their own business, or somebody that just wants to step up their game and learn a bit more on how they can improve their business?
So I think that one of the best places to find information, if they're not familiar with either the CGS website, so cgsmedicare.com or noridianmedicare.com, there's a whole education section that goes through. There are a calendar of events that they go through every one of the policies, typically every couple of months. So go look at those policies. They have Medicare 101 series where they talk about intake and orders, and they all the way to appeal. So use those resources that Medicare puts out there. They also have a Medicare Learning Network newsletter that comes out at least once a month. It may even be even more often than that. Go to your private payors, see what education they have. So if you're brand new, this is where I always recommend brand new administrators start. And then also see what your EHR, if they have any training, how to use their EHR, but sometimes they'll even do other training as well. Certainly you can get training from us where it could just be a one-on-one education, and we can go through LCDs, we can go through standard documentation. So reviewing your processes and your current administrative policies to ensure that everything is meeting policy. You can also have us do an audit of your charts. That's a great way. I typically kind of backwards engineer things. When I go into a practice, I will usually look at their AR and their denials, which will then help me understand where the holes are on the front end. So if we do an audit, it's very helpful because we can go in and very quickly tell from even 10 or 20 charts to see where the holes are and where there is missing documentation, or where you're doing really well. So it's also, hey, you're doing a great job.
Okay. And so these are all things to improve themselves. You also mentioned this, maybe there's outsourcing opportunities for people that say Brendan Erickson starts his own O&P and I just don't have the time or whatever to do it. Can I outsource?
Sure, you can. So there are a number of companies in the O&P field that do outsourcing, whether it's insurance verifications, authorizations, billing, AR, payment posting, writing appeals. And and even also helping you get your Medicare number, develop a policies and procedures manual for you. That's one thing that we've developed is a policies and procedures manual that meets ABC and Medicare standards. So outsourcing that, I think, is a great way to start a business, or say that you lost your biller. A lot of times we get a frantic call that a biller has left and that the practice owner hadn't really been keeping up on things, and it is a mess. So we've gotten calls like that where we go in and help get things stable, and whether we take over their billing or we help train a new biller, but at least we stabilize it.
Gotcha. That's awesome. So you've covered a lot here, and I think we could probably talk for 2 hours straight and people would listen, which is awesome. But these are questions we've asked you. What in your brain would you like to get out to our listeners that we may not have had the education to ask you about?
Oh gosh, we covered so much, and I like I told you, I can get into the weeds pretty easy, and all the things that come into decision making and ensuring that your claims go out correctly and that your teams are working together. I think there's a Maya Angelou said, when you know better, you do better. So like educate yourself, and even if you've done things not great in the past, move forward and say, okay, we're not going to do that anymore. We know that we need to do something different. So getting that education and improving your patient care with improving your administrative functions, I think is super important. Don't stick your head in the sand. Find out what other people are doing. Network with people. Call me if you have questions. Give me a call. And what can we do better? Honestly, I think the best way to start is like auditing some charts. People are often very surprised when they really look and dig into some of their charts. So whether they do it internally, I think sometimes it's hard when you do it internally though, because, oh, I know what they meant, or, oh, I think that's okay. Where if you really have an outside person looking at it, and then that they can educate you on it as well, is very important. And you mentioned Jessica earlier. She and I work very well together. She actually was in our office a couple of weeks ago because sometimes I'm too close to the situation. And so I said, hey, we're growing and we may need some help with processes. So I brought her in to work with us because she has a little bit different perspective than I do. And especially in the family-run business, sometimes it's hard for family members to challenge one another and things like that. So,
Yeah, you're practicing what you preach right there.
yeah, I do. I mean, I try to, for sure.
Well, the one thing I'll take away is you got to invest in yourself. I mean, everything that you said is just improving yourself, your own business through education, which is so important. And we can do it in all aspects of our life. Without pontificating too much, I love your message. It's awesome.
Yeah, I think, and for every person in your practice to want to improve themselves and to seek out that education, for the administrators that are listening, or even the practitioners who aren't owners, don't just wait for your owners to give this to you. Go seek it out yourself. Go to those Medicare websites that we talked about. Do your own education.
Take some time to reflect on your work a little bit. Seems like it can add a lot of value to your outcomes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Lesleigh, thank you so much for joining us. This has been so informative, and I learned so much just listening to you talk about the whole process and tips and tricks to improve your process flow for clinicians and admin staff.
Yeah, it really it takes all of us. One of my very first bosses in the business, Frank Bostock, would say, you need to meet or exceed your customers' expectations or change them. And whether it's, internal customers with each other, whether it's our patients, our referral sources, and that's really what I teach often. And we need to ensure that we're supporting one another wherever we are in the business.
Thank you again. Seriously.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
If you would like to connect with Lesleigh on LinkedIn or learn more about O&P Insight, follow the link in our show notes.
Thank you for tuning in to the O&P Check-in, an SPS podcast.
If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to episodes.
And while you're at it, rate and review the podcast to help fellow O&P professionals find us.
Email us your topic suggestions and feedback at spspodcast@spsco.com.
See you next time.